Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Nick Constantino here, and we got a great show. We're talking legal. We're talking the elderly. We got a lot to cover, so we're going to get right to it, and I'm going to introduce Josh Nelson, CEO and founder of Nelson Elder Care Law. Josh, how you doing, bud?
Doing amazing. So glad to be here. Marketing is one of the biggest things that helps us help more families, and excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, and you guys approach it very interestingly. A lot of people say they want to educate, but from what I've seen, you guys, the effort you put into it, it's part of marketing that is forgotten, right? To be out there, to be educating people. Most educate you because they're trying to trick you to buy something, right? Yeah. Educating people to really, look, put it this way. My grandma just turned 99 years old, okay? I love my grandma, and she is badass. My grandma, she fell, she blew out a hip, and was in and out of the hospital in 24 hours. They did surgery on her hip, and she was walking within a week. She's 99 years old. They did not let
you stay there like they used to. Once you're in, you're out.
And she is an immigrant, and she does not want to be a burden on anybody. She still lives alone. She still gardens. She's nuts. I mean, in fact, there was a couple of months ago, she locked herself outside of her house, and instead of calling anybody, she went into her shed, got a ladder, and climbed in a window at 98 years old. So the point is that you look around, we all have grandparents. We all have elderly we're around. And, you know, right now, I am getting bombarded with fraudulent calls. I got one from the DeKalb sheriff's actual number that was a fraudulent line. And the only way I knew it is because when I wouldn't give my information, I was called some derogatory terms that no sheriff should be saying. Is the only way I knew this was a scam.
Why is the sheriff cussing at me?
So, and then I called the sheriff's office and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know this is happening. And I was so the nonchalant. It's like, oh, it's a scam. I go, ma'am, they're using your number and it's a scam. So the point is, I can only imagine what's happening in the world of the elderly now and what they're dealing with and the target they are. So I think before we even get into the legal background, let's set the stage of what you guys do and how you guys help the elderly, because again, I think we're heading to that time where they need help.
Well, so first, glad to hear your grandma's 99, but it's not just the elderly in that context. I do have 7 clients over 100, and hearing their stories, just like your grandmother's, is amazing. But it's just a type of law that describes people 55 and older. As we start to have different ailments and go through different care journeys, how do we plan for that? And it's not old estate planning that's wills and trusts and things like that. It's really looking at the person, hearing their story, and figuring out, where do we go from here? How do we make sure that Nick's taken care of? How do we make sure that Nick's grandmother is taken care of? Like you said, scams are on the absolute rise, and they're so sophisticated today compared to what they were before. It's not some foreign number. It's not just your phone saying scam.
So you're not a Nigerian prince? You're not a Nigerian prince.
I'm going to send you a check. I need you to cash it. Just send me some money back. It's going to work out fine for both of us. But I think that that's the thing that we don't think about. And then you hear stories about people not wanting to lose their autonomy. So like you say, your grandmother going and actually grabbing a ladder to climb through a window before she's going to call a locksmith, because she has that nature and that fear of, oh my God, if I call my kids or my grandson and I say that I locked myself out, am I going to get put in a home? Like, I don't want people to know that I made this mistake. And that's really where we come in and help, is how do we have those conversations? How do we empower people to really live the lives they want to live?
Yeah, it's great. Okay, so now let's rewind. So talk about, first of all, getting into law school, getting into it, and then talk about the firm, because that'll set us up for the conversation to pull all this together.
Definitely a unique story. I used to run a race team for Dunlop Tires and the local company Maxxis Tires. Went through undergrad here at Kennesaw State. Got a degree in finance. Wasn't really the right time coming out of 2008 to have a degree in finance. Always wanted to go to law school, be a tax lawyer. Come to find out, my mom was working for Home Depot. She bet me she could beat me on the entrance exam. She did. We took it again just because I'll gamble on about anything. We both improved, got scholarships to law school. So me and my mom, Cindy Nelson, actually went to law school together. While we were there, I did tax law, got my master's in tax while I was in law school, but she worked for an elder law clinic that the school ran and started just dealing with all senior issues.
Wow.
So is the HOA trying to kick this senior out? Are they saying they can't have their bench or their American flag?
Don't even start me on the HOAs. I'm going to do a whole HOA separate show on how much I hate HOAs.
Well, it's so weird, but like the American flag for a senior veteran that fought in World War II that's fighting with his HOA that he can't have the American flag in his yard. And so she really just had a soft spot for them. Came out of law school. I did tax law. She did elder law. A little bit later, she started her own firm, and I came and joined. I met a veteran who was flying P-51s back in World War II. He got some really bad advice on taxes. Somebody told him just cash out his IRA.
All the same
just
time.
Take the tax hit, pay $40,000 in tax, no big deal, and then go try and get a $20,000 benefit. And that was just stupid. And so my mom, Cindy, brought me in to kind of co-counsel on that thing, fell in love with helping veterans, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing story. It's ironic. So I was a finance major, and I took my LSATs, and I was this close to going into law school. I don't know what clicked in my head. I didn't end up doing it, and I did pretty well. I would have been a tier 2 law school. It would have been it. I didn't end up doing it, but I was a finance degree, and I graduated in 2004. So I would have been entering, if I had done finance, the same time, where you just didn't want to be in finance.
So I graduated in 2013. Last year was my 10-year anniversary, and I am so amazed about how many people that even made it through the 3 years of law school who no longer practice. It is definitely not for everybody. Yeah. I think so many people get into it as, kind of the economy was down, I'll go get a master's or a law degree or something like that. But if you aren't really passionate about this, if you just don't have the drive to help people, there's not as much money in it as people hope.
Right.
And so they leave.
Right, and if there is money, most of the times you have to sell your soul to go find that money. I mean, like with most things, right?
Ambulance chasers, right? That's where we get a bad at.
There's a place for them, and some of them are really good, and some of them are really good marketers. But it is a crowded space. It is a convoluted and confusing space. So you specialize. So that's one thing that I think in most of these industries that differentiates. I'm not saying it's easy to market, but you specialize. Talk about what you specialize in. Talk about what your consultations are like. Talk about what your client base is like. Because I have to imagine that, like, my grandparents came from Italy on a boat and keep cash under a mattress, right? My grandfather was an 80-year-old security guard at a bank, and he still doesn't trust banks. Like, their relationship with money and with these things is different. So talk about what your clients are like and how much education is required to get them to a place where they're even comfortable with you.
I think that first you really hit it on the head and you kind of dismissed it, but it is easy whenever you have a niche. You got to first identify who your avatar is, and my avatar is not somebody that's out there 30 years old with new kids trying to figure out what happens if we get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
My avatar is people 55 and older that are starting to think about retirement. They don't want to worry about their money. They don't want to worry about their health. They really don't want to be a burden. A lot of times in elder law, we talk about asset protection, but really where we focused is how do we become a burden release?
Yeah.
How do we make it so that whenever your grandma does get where she can't live alone, she's not being that, kind of duty for your parents or you or whoever.
I bet you if you asked 20 people on the street, they would have no idea how much a funeral costs or how much those processes and everything cost. I bet you they would have no idea.
Almost everybody we meet, whenever we first meet them, has no idea how much like having somebody in your house costs, how much going to these beautiful assisted livings costs. Most people don't even know what a nursing home is, or the fact that it costs $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Yeah. Average retirement for people is $2,500.
Yeah.
How do you make up $7,500?
Yeah.
You come talk to people like us.
And pensions are gone. So that's going to even get worse when this next wave comes out and they realize that there's no pension there. Social Security is going to be diminished. 401ks would look averages. So it's going to get worse. So let's not be all doom and gloom yet. But
so back to your question of how do we market towards them? It's really just letting them know first that there's an option. So many people are afraid to even look at their bank accounts or do a budget. I've worked with congressmen, judges, financial advisors, other attorneys, and the reality is almost nobody really works on a budget. So your normal, grandmother, grandfather, they don't do it. A lot of times one spouse has been handling all the bills. If that spouse gets sick, the other one's just left in turmoil. They don't even know how much money they have, let alone how much they spend. And
or how much their house is worth. I mean, my grandma, they bought their house, I think, for like $12,000 because it was when World War II vets were settling in New York. You know what the house is worth now? It's a bungalow in Queens is worth $1.3 million. Well,
I'll tell you, my grandma's going to hate me, and I hope she doesn't hear this, but whenever I go out to eat with my grandmother, I have to leave cash tip afterwards because even if she demands she's going to pick up the meal, it will be a $2 or $5 tip, and you don't want to stiff the waitress, so you got to be laying down cash afterwards.
I do it with my father-in-law.
Yeah,
he's 76 and I'll do it. He's 86 and all the time before he turns around, I'm like, here's an extra $6, just take it. Because he's still doing math on 12%. And I'm like, inflation's everywhere, dude. But you don't want to have that conversation.
And that's the thing is you appreciate the gesture, but how do you make it work? And that's really what we do is we figure out things to make the system work, things to make people's aging journey not feel burdenous to them.
Yeah, so I want to continue this after the break, but talk about how you would distinguish yourself or delineate yourself from a financial advisor. Because when you meet a financial advisor, like my parents would get to, and they're meeting with the state attorneys and they're meeting, but how do you distinguish? Because that's what a financial advisor can say, don't meet with him, meet with me, because I know how to beat the market and I know all this stuff. Now, right, like you said, they're never saying how to protect the family. They're just saying how to make you the most money so they make the most money. But how do you delineate yourself? And I bet you this will carry us through the break and we'll talk broadly about the industry, but how do you delineate yourself from a financial advisor?
1,000% different. So we don't do any actual money management. We don't have any kind of assets under management, which is how most financial advisors get paid. They're taking 1.5% of all your stuff every year. We work on a flat rate model. You come in, you pay me once, and that's all you got to do. We're big proponents of if you do this once, there's no reoccurring fees, there's no ongoing, the old estate planning model of you got to come back every 3 years and pay me money is just dumb. We know that seniors are on a fixed budget. We have very transparent flat rate pricing, and we're going to help you everything that you need to know to protect your money, not just build it. Because it's not just how much you make, it's how much you keep. So taxes, keeping it free from medical costs, making sure that you qualify for any government benefits that are out there. That's really where our specialty is.
Yeah, and I have to imagine, I don't know if it's I've gotten older and paid more attention, but the laws around these things change. Almost every 6 months, it feels like there's a new RMD age changes. And like these things, they change so fast. And like they change, but they don't go into effect into now. So just keeping up with that stuff has to be exhausting.
Absolutely. One of the things that we find is, I joke that what we do is truly Google proof because it's mandated by not only your county, but your state and the federal government. So if you go Google something and you find out that nationwide there's been a change, you don't know how it really impacts Georgia. So how does Medicaid expansion impact Georgia residents and seniors? How do you qualify for different things to get Medicare waiver, so your insurance paid for cheaper? What kind of things do you need to avoid with your health insurance? What do you need to do with your taxes? Do you even need to file taxes? I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things for somebody like your grandmother is she still filing her taxes? Or
well, she probably wouldn't even know. My dad's been doing it for probably 50 years.
Years ago, somebody said, nah, you're good. She just ran with it. And then all of a sudden they do big tax law changes. And then they don't know if it's a scam call from the IRS or a scam letter.
Right. They wouldn't even know where to start. Yeah. And I think we'll pick up on that because he brought up a good point about how states and municipalities are so different. That's got to be exhausting. But you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we will be right back.